Hey everyone. So over the last 2 years, I've practiced a lot of primitive bushcraft and primitive living skills. And in that span of time, I learned a few things about what it means to be a primitive. I like to share my observations with everyone today. So in the modern world, we get into these routines and patterns that are repeated every single day. It gets to the point where hardly any thought is required to get through the day. So really, our five senses are really underutilized. In a primitive man's world, one's senses are fully utilized. It's a world of vivid colors, sounds of trees, animals, wind against your skin, constant threats and opportunities. Your sense of smell, your sense of touch, all fused into a single experience. I sometimes really marvel at the beauty of it all. Most modern civilized societies are essentially centralized, hierarchical caste systems. As a civilized person, we are usually highly specialized in doing a single thing. Much of what we need to live on comes from the efforts of many other people. If this vast system was somehow disrupted, the average modern civilized person cannot really procure the food, the shelter, the clothing, and the tools that he really needs to survive. For a primitive man, the knowledge of reconstituting his culture is essentially there. He knows exactly what he needs to do in order to make fire, in order to find and locate sources of food, in order to craft many different kinds of tools, how to build shelter, how to make clothing. He pretty much knows how to do much of that totally by himself with the resources available to him. In the modern world, one feels as if there is no limit to our ability to control the physical world. There's a sense that man can bend the environment to suit our every whim. For the primitive man, the natural world is unimaginably vast, and his ability to shape that world is pitifully limited. The entire technology base of many primitive cultures involve working with pieces of wood that is around 2 inches in diameter. This is because 2 inches is roughly the limit of efficient Stone Age woodworking. So primitive people have this incredible feeling of humbleness and reverence towards their natural environment. They feel small in comparison to the environment that they live in. In a modern society, food can be obtained everywhere. This is because plant and animal life can be mass produced, and thus there is a sense of life as being very cheap and somehow disposable. For the primitive man, every animal that he takes, every calorie that he consumes, all came at tremendous cost. For his life to continue, the life of other living creatures must end, and thus the exchange of life for life is constantly in his face. This is a beautiful and precarious balance that primitive peoples are keenly aware of. And thus, if you look at most hunter-gatherer cultures, they have this sense of immense gratitude and respect towards the animals and plants that they harvest, and they choose to not waste a single bit of it. Now, every person and every culture has what we call a mental model. Think of the mental model as a collection of knowledge that defines our understanding of how the world works. For a primitive, living completely immersed in the natural world, this mental model is constantly being tested and challenged by reality. In the forest, you may think that something is supposed to work in a certain way, but nature has a way of very quickly and often painfully reminding you that your interpretation of reality is not actually reality. This kind of corrective feedback does not really apply to modern people. For you see, a modern city or urban zone is an almost completely artificial man-made environment. And this environment is, in many ways, a physical manifestation of the collective mental model of a civilization. People living in this man-made environment is really insulated against the corrective negative feedback of nature. For example, incredible amounts of pollution that a city produces can simply be flushed into the oceans or shipped away and buried in a landfill. The shocking reduction in biological diversity in a modern country can be masked by lots of trivial entertainment and feel good marketing. A certain amount of injustice and inequality and inequity in a society can simply be silenced by having a monopoly on violence and brute force. So here's what I'm trying to get at, folks. The primitive man knows really very little, but due to the nature of his existence, most of his knowledge is timeless truth, what we might call wisdom. The civilized man knows much, but I think most of that knowledge is not truth or wisdom at all, that most of it is simply an illusion. Anyway, thanks for listening to my little rant. I hope you guys have a nice day. Take care.